Hi folks, McBeard back here with another video, and I want to talk to you about new cards, but first, just want to let you know that I'm doing a lot of traveling this August, so you can expect a lot of travel vlogs as I make my way over to Europe once again for Life Coach's Gwent Together Community Gwent event. Very excited to take part in such a thing. Thank you very much for the invitation. But when I travel, I like to do YouTube videos that are just me on my phone, doing travel vlogs, so you can expect a lot of that, and you can expect a lot of content coming from me from this event. I'm going to hound people to record stuff with me. So I definitely won't be taking a break on YouTube as I travel, so you can expect those. And but I did want to talk to you about new cards. Now, I was holding off on making a video like this because I was waiting for a few more cards to be revealed. But it's been a week and we got one, so let's talk about that card. Now, I've talked about the previous 8 new cards already in a previous video, which you can find in the description below. And I also talk about these cards on the Commander's Horn podcast, episode 47, with my guest co-host, Merchant. Merchant and I talk about all of the cards in fair depth, I would say. That came out on Wednesday the 2nd. Merchant also generously guested the video, kind of hosted the video on his, or hosted the podcast on his channel as well. So if you got to know the Commander's Horn podcast through Merchant, thanks very much, Merchant, and welcome aboard, Commandos. That being said, let's talk about the new card that has been revealed by the great man, Paul Berza himself. His favorite faction, which he is unapologetic about, absolutely. He does love Scoia'Tael a lot, and he released the information on the Farseer. Cue visual effects. Ooh, ah. The text reads exactly as posted by Paul. If any ally or unit in your hand or deck other than a Farseer is boosted during your turn, hand or deck, boost self by 2 at the end of turn. So this is actually a really interesting card. I thought about it a little bit. My initial reaction was that it was going to be a slow card that was going to work best with stuff like Dragoons and Hawker supports, but really it's more so the idea of a card that is boosting itself by 2. Every turn you can boost something in your hand or deck, and there are lots of ways you can do that. And it's not really limited to stuff like Dragoons or supports. So much like Skellige's Clan Drum and Warmonger, which was revealed last week, that card seemed to be a very interesting and flexible card for the faction, Skellige faction, since it caters to every kind of deck, because there's always a reason, almost always a reason in Skellige to discard a card from your deck into your graveyard, bypassing the hand completely. The Raiders were the obvious choice, which allowed a lot of flexibility in deck building throughout lots of different leaders and archetypes. So the Clan Drum and Warmonger is a card that really kind of speaks for the whole faction and actually gives something to the whole faction. And I do believe that this is the same for the Farseer and Scoia'Tael. This card can actually cater to a lot of different archetypes that need help, I guess you could say. I would say that right now, Elven Mercenary is really stealing the show right now for Scoia'Tael. It's a very, very good card. And the boost, the dwarf deck, you may have seen it, that involves boosting dwarves and carryover that is almost impossible to take over. You know, these are the things that are really propping Scoia'Tael up right now, because it's really hard to kind of build a deck that can manage to take on the big boys, Dagon, King Bran. So let's take a look at some of the cards that Farseer would work very well with that currently exist in the game. So these are all the cards right now that would work with Farseer, all the cards that have been released, of course. I mean, there could be new cards that function with Farseer, and, you know, based on the 2 Nilfgaard reveals, the Assassin and the Magni Division, both of those cards have synergy, so it's possible that each of these bronze sets will have synergy with each other. So the Farseer may not be alone with these cards. There could be more cards, but as we know right now, the Farseer would work with some archetypes that could use a little bit of help. A lot of these cards cater to, you know, carryover in the sense that cards you play in the future will be very strong, but to do that, you have probably lower tempo plays earlier on. The Farseer allows you to build points on the board at a continuing rate while you do the magic that your deck can do based on the archetype. So starting at the top here, the Doppelthana Protector was a real menace when the public beta first started. It was one of the new cards introduced in the public beta that made a Spell Scoia'Tael, aka Scoia'Tael, a viable archetype, and it was a fairly uninteractive deck. You just spammed weather and spells. You know, weather and spells, some spells were stronger, lots of weather was stronger back then, so that deck archetype was really strong, and ultimately finished it off with maybe a quenned up, super massive trio of protectors thanks to cards like Ailing. You could rally them out. You could thin your deck reliably, so you were drawing these cards, and it was a menace of a deck for a while. A lot of people didn't seem to like this card, but this card was a nerf, and Scoia'Tael saw a number of nerfs along the way, and just ultimately kind of fell out of flavor. I don't think it would perform as much now. I mean, as people got to play against it, it became very clear the game plan and how to get ahead and try to stop them. You know, Nilfgaard being very popular helped because Peter would destroy this card. Anyway, the point is, this card made Scoia'Tael viable, and every time this card gets boosted, the Farseer would get boosted as well. So it could open up a new way to play with protectors as Scoia'Tael. And then, of course, there's the Vanguards for the Mulligan archetype. Now, your leader wouldn't be Ethna anymore, or Anya, depending on if you're pronouncing it correctly, or me. But I do know it's Anya. I've heard the arguments, and I believe them. But in this case, you'd probably want to play Francesca because you'd be playing a mulligan deck, and every time you mulligan a card, this card gets boosted. Any turn you mulligan a card with any of these cards in your deck at all would boost the Farseer as well. So, you know, lots of extra tempo options coming in from Francesca, and that could be, you know, if there was a flex bronze before in mulligan, or perhaps another way to make it a little bit stronger, the Farseer could help with that. On top of that, playing Dragoons, which boosts something in your hand every turn, or playing something like Support, which boosts a unit in your hand when you play it, these guarantee that you're boosting something in your hand every turn. The Dragoon especially, as this is kind of set it and forget it, but the Support would also help towards this as well. And Ida Amin spawns Quen, and Quen in general is very helpful for boosting not only just the units that are growing in your deck, such as Vanguards or perhaps Protectors. You know, Northern Realms does this with Reaver Hunters through Kira, so Ida using it on these giant units is fair as well. And it does boost the copies in your hand and in your deck, so that would also proc the Farseer. And then there are these nebulous, you know, we need to test this, but the wording suggests in Decoy that the ally is returned to your hand, boosted, and then played. So the boosting does occur in your hand. You know, the tooltip suggests that. So the Decoy could work. Alzur's Double Cross, as well as Marching Orders, do say that the boosting occurs before the playing of the card occurs. So the boosting could happen in the deck. I'm not quite sure where the boosting happens, like as far as like the actual tech of the game. So it's possible that these cards would affect the Farseer as well. But you can see that, you know, you wouldn't play with all of these cards in the same deck, as some of them serve different archetypes. But you can see how the Farseer would have a lot of chances to proc. So every turn, probably almost every turn, you're boosting it by 2. But the key thing about the Farseer that you should know is that, you know, you can have 3 of them on the board, and they're agile units. So you can play them on all the different rows. So you're not, you know, unlike Emperor Brigade and the monster card, the new card Cockatrice, you're not going to see these lining up very often for Igni. Generally, Igni is the only example I can give you, because they can get scorched, as they will be getting big. But Igni specifically, it does dodge that, and it also dodges, you know, anything else that would affect grouping of units. So, you know, debuff like D-Bomb or something like that. But that being said, the card has a lot of opportunities to shine, whether or not it is a tool that will really give mulligan or spell-based decks a boost, or whether this is just going to make Dragoon, an already decent card, and Support, an already decent card, better than they already are. In either case, I think Scoia'Tael could use the help. Very excited to see the next 2 cards as well coming in for Scoia'Tael, as well as the rest of the cards. I just, you know, I want to be able to talk about all of these cards with you so we can kind of see the big picture, because we have to discuss things in a vacuum when cards are released like this. But hope you enjoyed the talk here about this card. Very excited to see kind of what new Scoia'Tael comes in. I am willing to give spells another chance, and, you know, it's possible that the other 2 cards may cater to that as well. But I do hope that generally, you know, we see cards more like Farseer and Clandrum and Warmonger. And in some ways you could say Cockatrice as well, because Death Wish isn't kind of an all-encompassing thing. Different Death Wishes do different things. So, you know, we get to see cards that help the faction overall with, and it's simple, right? Boost a unit in your hand or deck. Lots of cards do that for Scoia'Tael. So thanks for watching. Like I said, I'm going to keep making videos for the next couple of days, or I'm going to try to, but the travel vlogs, stay tuned for those. I really, really love doing those. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you soon.